Hi, everyone. Welcome to our next episode of As the Walker Turns. I have a very special guest today. This is
Penelope Perry.
And how do we know each other, Penelope?
We work together.
Mostly. We also bonded. We're both from Montana.
We are both from Montana.
And we both ended up in San Diego somehow.
We did.
Different times, but it's kind of weird. And then we ended up working together.
We both have parents that have dementia.
We sure do. Yes, that is another thing we share. And hopefully a love for seniors.
Yes. True.
So how long have you worked in the industry?
I have been working in senior living since 2012. So just over
14 years? 13? What is this year? 2025? Mm-hmm. All right, you guys can do the math. I'm not doing the math today.
So pause, because the date's wrong. That would be 2010. Sorry.
Does it matter?
No.
Okay, we're going to just keep going then.
Okay.
Okay. Jared, keep going, okay? So, Penelope, with this much time in the industry, you must have some stories. I've been sharing some of my personal stories. Do you have anything that you think is amusing or funny or something you want to share?
Yeah, so I have 3 sons, and one of which are gross. Boys are gross, especially as teenagers. Yes. And I love one-upping them because I can talk the grossest talk just from things that happen at work sometimes with bodily functions, and our bodies do gross stuff. So I love when they're trying to be gross, and then especially if we're having dinner. And I can just really...
You just come in for the kill?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I can ruin their appetite like that. And I like that.
And I love that about you, Penelope, because oftentimes we'll have kind of a rowdy group or we're just having a good time and you're very quiet. And then just when the conversation lulls, you will just come in like out of nowhere and everyone is just stunned in silence with what you've been saving up for the perfect moment. So that's one of my favorite things about you.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So our episode today is going to be talking about a very, sometimes people would consider to be a tricky part of the industry, or understanding what we call levels of care. And it's pretty easy to understand rent, right? It's like, okay, you get the apartment, here's the keys, square footage and all that. And when it comes into levels of care, I kind of call it's sticky, right? And it's very sometimes challenging for family members or even the residents them to understand. So can you kind of talk me through how you work with families in terms of determining, what a level of care would look like?
You bet. I think my best way that I've been able to explain it in a way that they can understand is kind of like the a la carte menu where you order individually. So we want to help the resident be as independent as possible, but we also want them to be safe. So we provide care if they're not safe to do on their own. So in that way, every little thing that we do for them, any assisted daily living, any escort, safety check, depending on how much time that is, there's points assigned to it. So if it's something we do once a week, we would have less points than something we do several times a day. And then those are accumulated. And in the bracket, 0 to 19.9 is level 1, 20 and up is level 2, 28.9 and up is 3. And do not quote me on 4, but...
And is that something that like a software system does, or how do they put them in these like kind of clumps or chunks of points?
Yeah. So PointClickCare, which is the platform that we use, tallies those points. They are hidden for our nurses. To be fair, the nurses do 30 of these a month. Mm-hmm. It's pretty easy to kind of, after doing this for some time, figure it out what the points are. But we have it hidden because we want it to be a very accurate.
Right.
Very accurate for the families. And we can kind of wiggle that around as they get more independent and they're doing things on their own. If you remove one, you can see that it dropped 3 points and then you quickly learn that was 3 points. But it is combined that way. And I think the reason the system has it set up in that time is, in theory, that's about how much time the care partners, the CNAs, would spend with the resident in that day. Okay. So even if one person is at 21 and one's at 26 and they're still both a level 2, there's still there's some wiggle room in there because it may take me a little bit longer to shower than...
Sure. If I'm having a bad day or something like that. Okay. Have you ever worked in a community or seen some others where they do like an all-inclusive pricing or some other type of way to price out care?
I haven't worked in a community that does that, but when we were looking, so my dad was at the Ridge for a while, but then wanted to be closer to my mom wanted them closer in Montana, and we looked at several up in Montana, and 2 of those were all inclusive. And I think there's pros and cons, but at that point, my dad was totally independent in everything that he was doing, just some prompting and cueing. And so we were paying for basically a level 4 care, and he wasn't ready for that. And it's just a gamble.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know if they're going to go through all those levels and if they're going to be at a level 4 for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I think there's pros and cons each way, but I really, as a nurse, I fight for their independence, because as soon as we start taking things away, they don't have very much left that they get to make choices on.
Right.
I think there's some giving up, or, you know, that drive to thrive decreases. And so we want to allow them to do everything that they possibly can on their own and just supplement where is needed, which is what our system, the Ridge, really promotes.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it, because I have done all-inclusives at different companies before, and it does, in order for a company to survive, whether you're nonprofit or for-profit, it doesn't matter. You still have to make money at the end of the day to pay the staff, right? And when you're doing an all-inclusive model, you are banking on those independent or lower levels of care to pay for the residents that are higher level of care, right? Or kind of end of life. And if you look at an all-inclusive resort, same thing, right? Your alcohol or all your foods may be included, but they're banking on the people that are not drinking that out of house and home, as opposed to the 5% that are, you know, barely walking.
Right.
So kind of a similar model. The nice thing for a family member with an all-inclusive is, you know, the price every month, right? Like, you know, you can set your budget around it.
Sure.
Which is great. But on the other side, you're right. There is a little bit of a gamble there.
But there's some of the pros that I found, though, is that, you know, when my dad was staying at our Cottonwood community, I could go in and supplement helping him shower, because I wanted to have that time with him, because I knew I wasn't going to get to do that forever. And that wasn't to do it to save money, but it was to do it because I wanted that time. And so there's options, like,
right,
you know, we can do things that we still want to do as a family for our parent, and it doesn't say, I mean, the goal isn't to save money, but it allows that in there. And
flexibility.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, we've had residents in the past too, where as long as it's allowed in the state for family members to do the medications.
Yeah.
Right. As long as we have all the proper documentation, and other families are like, no, thank you. Like, I mean, I did my mom's meds for a while when she was living at home, and I'm like, this felt like a full-time job. Yeah. So thank God that there are other people that can do that for us.
And I also think, like, my mom, this is a myth, but my mom felt like with the all-inclusive that we ended up choosing, just because that was what was in our small town. My mom's like, well, then we're going to get the most bang for the buck and have to do everything for that. Well, he didn't like that.
Oh.
And as soon as you start buttoning their pants when they don't need it and tying their shoes, then they start to not let you do everything for them.
Right.
So there is some, like, misconceptions that doing everything for somebody is
maybe not the beneficial to them in the long run. Okay, that makes sense. When do these things change, or when can you expect, like, let's just say that you're on a point system or a level system. When would you expect that to either go up or go down? How does that work?
Well, just to kind of preface, I do think we are all guessing. The family, unless you've been the full-time caregiver, you're guessing when you're explaining to us what you think your loved one needs. And then as a community, we're taking that information and the charts and the physician's orders and putting together a picture that we think. But it's never that accurate. It takes about 30 days. So at the Ridge, we reassess in 30 days. And it can be a little bit sooner or a little bit later, depending on the acclimation period. But there's usually some fluctuation in that. Very rarely do we get it right away. It just takes a little time to get to know them and what they need. And they may be more independent now that they have grab bars in the bathroom, and they're getting their meds correctly, and they're getting 3 meals a day and a good night's sleep and all the things. So that one is to be expected. Like, I think when you move someone into a community, you should, often it can be a little bit of a decline, especially if there's cognitive loss, and then they'll kind of plateau or even out.
Yeah.
But even if there's not cognitive loss, there's a little bit of, there's fluctuation the first 30 days because it's a life change and need to account for that. And then any illness, urinary tract infection, if there's multiple falls or a fall, especially with an injury, like, be prepared to have their level of care reassessed, just because we want to have additional support. And then the good news is, if they're working with physical therapy and having home health come in, or if they have an injury that's healed or a wound that's healed and they're starting to feel better, and occasionally it can be just med management, and now they're getting their meds as they were always supposed to, they can improve, and you can see, you know, that they're thriving. Right. We don't need to do as much for them as they first did.
Okay. So if I was looking at, my mom or a loved one, I would expect the first 30 days, this is our best guess. We're all in trying to do our best. We need to evaluate, make sure like this is the new normal, whatever the new normal looks like. And then from there would be kind of like a triggering event, whether it's a fall or illness. And when you say illness, would it be something that's pretty significant, not like a minor cold?
No, if you get a cold, we're gonna supplement till you get better, but then we're gonna, go back to where you were. But if there's, like right now, a lot of people that get COVID and then they have the long COVID and they're short of breath for weeks after, especially our elderly, like they might now need oxygen, not always, or they definitely get winded quicker and they need escorts down to the dining room or back, or, in memory care, if there's any kind of infection, as simple as a UTI, there might be a little bit of a decline where now something that they could do a week ago, even though the antibiotic course is finished, they don't always go back to where they were. And so there's a chance that they might need additional assistance.
And that might be their new baseline. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we don't do it right away unless it's like a fractured arm or something that's very obvious. But if they don't kind of bounce back within a few days to a week after the illness is resolved, then we need to talk about this might be the new normal.
Okay. So not like, I guess to just set expectations, it wouldn't be like the hospital where they are charting every single minute and, like, okay, this is the new care plan. We're not running around making sure,
No, our nurses in our community will go see your loved one, but we also really rely on our CNAs and our care partners because they are in there all the time doing the work. So if they didn't used to help them use the bathroom, but they're noticing that they are, because they're not going to not do it just because it's not on their service plan, they'll communicate that. And we ask for a few times, like, come and get us. They can chart that it was an as-needed task that they helped with. And then all that information together, then we kind of put it together and talk to the family. That
you can have a bad couple of days, but if this is becoming a pattern, then you can expect a care conference.
Right.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
We need to start doing this routinely.
Okay. One of the things that, I was looking at when, for my mom was, how much could this potentially cost, knowing that, we're a level system, right? The community she's at is a level system. So do you think that would be a good question for the families to ask? Just say, hey, look, like, we know that the starting price, I'm making this up, is $300 for a level of care. But would it be wise for them to say, what is the worst case scenario?
That is the hardest part about assisted living for me is we bring someone in, they're a level 1, and then as they decline and they age in place, and now they're a level 4 and the family can't afford to stay, we're attached. It's painful to move them when they're already declining in every other way. Now they have to go find a new community. So I really think as the family that's looking out, you should plan on the highest level of care that community has. Can you afford that for, I don't know, a year? I don't have a crystal ball, but for quite a while, because there's a chance, because you want, wherever you are, you want it to be the best place and you want them to stay there till the end. So make sure that you can afford, for us, it's level 4 for at least a year or so. Right. So that you do not have to move them when it's the end of their life. And now we have to say goodbye. The community is attached. You have to, you wanted to spend time with your loved one and now you got to shop around, move furniture around. It's
not good.
No. And that is really painful. And it puts the nurse in a tricky situation because we don't want to say goodbye either, but we don't have free CNAs running around where we can just do things for free.
Right. One of the things that we just updated, this will probably be my last question, but we just did an update on the website, and you were pretty helpful to our sales and marketing team as far as personas and trying to educate the public on what a level 1 would look like versus what a level 4 would look like. So can you talk just a little bit about, what that process was like and how you kind of came up with that?
Yeah. Well, Diane, who helps us with communication, did a lot of it, and she's great and creative. And it was funny, as I was reading them through, I was trying to picture, because in my mind, I know in each of the communities who are 1s and 2s and 3s, not all of them, but I know a few of them stand out. But these were I could kind of put together a few people, and they nailed it right on the head. But I thought it was a good broad, that if you were looking for your loved one, you could kind of put your mom or dad into one of those categories pretty easily. And it was fun because I think this is the hardest part of the sales process. I'm not a salesman, but I do know that they always, when I go out to the assessment as the nurse, there's lots of questions about it. And I feel like this will help kind of gap that so they can like paint a picture of and sort of place what their parent looks like into one of those 4 personas that we
Right.
put on the, which I know is our goal. So
Yeah, I think it's always helpful just, again, the more information out there, the better, because we want to be an industry of transparency. We certainly do, at our communities. And the more we can set expectations out the front, the easier it is for everyone to be in that transition.
yeah, that's true.
And oftentimes there's lots of different siblings or other, decision makers in this. And if you can kind of point them to one source, it does take some of that back and forth, out of the mix.
I just want to throw in a plug. If you are the family member going to the assessment with your mom or dad, or they're being assessed in the hospital or whatever, I think it's important. Sometimes I've noticed that the kids, especially like the daughters, are like, mom and dad are independent and everything, and you're trying to like paint this beautiful
right
A+ report card. Yeah, and that actually, I see why you're doing it, because I was that daughter doing the same thing for my dad. I'm like, shut up. But I think that it doesn't help the community, because we're like, you got your dad over there with a little dementia, and then the daughter saying one thing. Of course, we're going to bring the daughter, and then we get here and we're not giving them enough support, and they're not going to thrive, or they're going to fall. So I do think if you're the loved one helping at that assessment, I would err on the side of letting them do the speaking, or err on the side that sometimes they do need a little help using the restroom, or
you don't know.
Have a slip and fight. Yeah,
right. And would you say that it's more? I would say it does not help in the long run to omit or forget, or sometimes maybe not even be truthful about where mom and dad truly is, because at the end of the day, we're going to have the same issues whether they're under their own roof or the roof here, right? And so being transparent and just being upfront and honest is just going to make everyone have a better transition.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for
you.
joining us.
Yes,
and we will see everybody next time. Thanks for joining us.
Goodbye.
Bye.